considering how this offseason started, with all of those transfer portal departures, there is a little bit more positivity surrounding this USC football program now, and it starts at the top. Right now, in this current day and age of college football, it is becoming more and more like the National Football League. And a lot of times in college football, you need a great director of player personnel, a chief of staff, a general manager, whatever you want to call it. In USC this offseason, they went out and they got one of the best in the game, taking one from their rival in Notre Dame, taking Chad Bowden. I think that's where I really want to start with this, as far as talking about if USC is going to turn the corner. For them to turn the corner, they need to continue just bring in better players. Okay, when we talk about the conversation of where USC is compared to maybe where some college football playoff teams are or some conference championship teams are, I think it just comes down to talent. It comes down to players in the room. And I think what Chad Bowden proved that he can do at Notre Dame is that he can go out, he can recruit good players, and he can give this coaching staff good players to be able to develop into winning or maybe championship level football teams. He was Notre Dame's first general manager, the 2024 Football Scoop Player Personnel Director of the Year. That's kind of my first point as far as player personnel and Chad Bowden as it goes with them possibly turning the corner. My second point, and we're talking optimism right now for USC. My second point, want to make sure I get that in the shot right there because I was holding it up out of frame. My second point as it pertains to the Trojans right now is what they're doing in this 2026 recruiting class. It's maybe starting to get back on track with what we're used to for USC. According to On3, they have the number 2 class for 2026 behind only the Oregon Ducks, who sit up there at number 1. They have 4 top 150 commits. And folks, that number will continue to grow as Chad Bowden lays down his plan, as Chad Bowden really gets his feet on the ground in Southern California. This thing is going to continue to get better. Okay, he is one of the best out there as far as acquiring talent. And him and Lincoln Riley together, Lincoln Riley, like out of all of these things that I could say about USC turning the corner, Lincoln Riley is not at the tip of my tongue. And that should maybe say something a little bit right there. But I think having Chad Bowden running this recruiting plan and formulating this recruiting plan with Lincoln Riley, I think is going to allow USC to continue to get better and better and better over time as it pertains to bringing in better players and getting USC to where they expect to be from a recruiting standpoint, and that's in the top 10 every single season. As far as 2025 goes, I really like their defense. And I think their defense is going to continue to turn the corner, and I think their defense is going to continue to improve. Now, I generally think when you bring in a new staff on either side of the football, I think the biggest jump will be from year 1 to year 2. That's when the system is installed. A lot of the newness is now a little bit more familiar. And now you can take what you know, and now you can improve on your skills as you move on to year number 2. When you go from like year 0 to year 1, there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of education, there's a lot of implementation, working out the kinks, what works and what doesn't with the scheme versus the personnel. So I think this season could be a bigger jump, a more sizable jump for USC, and you could really start to see their defense, I think, be really, really good within the Big Ten Conference. Last season, for example, you talk about this jump. Here's the type of jump that we saw in year number 1 for this USC defensive coaching staff. In 2023, the Trojans were 97th in the country in DF+. They jump up to 37th in DF+. Hey, if you're not much of an analytics, how about some good old-fashioned math? In 2023, they were 121st in scoring defense, giving up 34.4 points per game. Hard stop before I get to the 2024 numbers. In 2023, it was a combination of a couple of things. That was one of the best, maybe the best Pac-12 season we've seen in a long time. And USC's defense took on some of the best offenses that we've seen in a long time. But on the flip side, this was still a bad coaching staff. So I think those combination of things, of course, led to the bad triple-digit type of season in 2023. Like you had Bo Nix's Oregon, you had Michael Penix in Washington, you played a Jedfish Arizona team that went 10-3, Colorado, Notre Dame. Like they were all in that slate in 2023 over there. But this was also a defense that gave up 49 points to Cal and 38 to UCLA. In a loss. And I think when you look forward to 2024, look, I don't say this as a slight to the Big Ten, but that was like a record-setting year for the Pac-12. And I think USC's defense was going to improve just because they weren't facing 4,000-yard passers throughout their conference slate. But when it comes to scoring defense, they went from 34.4 points per game, 121st in the country, as I already mentioned, to 58th in the country, chopping 10 points off of that thing, going to 24.1 points per game this season. So you saw a level of improvement in year one. Now it's time to really kick into gear in year two. And I think a big part of their defense kicking into gear in year number two is going to be their defensive line. Out of all of the three levels of the defense for USC, I think I'm most excited about what this defensive line can do. Anthony Lucas comes back. He was very good before he got injured last year. Devin Tompkins, Braylon Shelby, Kobe Pepe, Cam Fountain are all coming back this season. I'm really excited to see the development that Cam Fountain especially can have coming off the edge in his sophomore season this year. A potential Lucas and Fountain combination is very exciting for the Trojans. But then you bring in some of that beef that I've talked about in previous versions of this show with 300-plus pound bodies coming over from the SEC transfers, Keyshawn Silver and Jamal Jarrett. And then, of course, you got Thanos, Jakeem Stewart, the all-everything five-star defensive lineman, true freshman. I think there's a lot of depth. I think there's a lot to be excited about, certainly. Eric Henderson, I really like him and his ability to be able to continue to develop on this defensive line as well. Now, when I look at this whole, I mentioned staff at the beginning of this thing. When I look at the USC staff, specifically on defense, it's very clear to me the image that they're trying to build. They are loading their defensive staff with former NFL coaches, right? You look at Eric Henderson, the guy I just mentioned, former defensive line coach. He came over from the Los Angeles Rams. What a press conference it was for Rob Ryan introducing himself. Of course, he's got so much NFL experience. He's coming in to be the linebackers coach for USC. Danton Lynn, the leader of this whole thing, in there, a defensive coordinator. Of course, he had a lot of NFL experience with the Baltimore Ravens defense, and we know how successful that Ravens-style defense has been over with the Michigan Wolverines. I think USC is building a defensive staff, and it's building a message to transfer portal players as well as high school recruits. We've got a defensive coaching staff full of former NFL coaches that know what it takes to succeed in the NFL, that knows what it takes for you to be able to get to the National Football League. And I think, like, what does it say about USC as a program where that is head coached by Lincoln Riley, supposedly this offensive mastermind, and here I am raving and salivating and very excited over what USC is doing on the defensive side of the ball. That should signal some excitement for some Trojan fans down there in Southern California as well. The thing I want to finish up about turning the corner in 2025 for USC is I think we know who we really want to get the football to. At the beginning of last season for the USC Trojans, and I remember talking about this in my season preview with Ryan Dyrud. I remember really talking about it throughout the season, even as well as who's going to stand out as the number one guy? Who's going to be the receivers? And it was different. It seemed very different for USC from week to week to week to week. Now you have the departures of Zachariah Branch. You have the departures of Kyron Hudson. You have the departures of Deuce Robinson. Now I think you are able to focus on what could be one of the best wide receiver duos, not only in the Big Ten, but I'm going to say it right now, maybe all of college football in Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon. It was very clear to me that as the season went along and at different parts during the season, that these are the two guys that really stood out. These are the two guys that I think USC really needed to focus in on their passing game. And as we look forward to 2025 and their ability to maybe turn the corner sooner rather than later, having these type of game-changing wide receivers, I think is exactly what Lincoln Riley wants within this offense for the USC Trojans. Now, they got to figure something out at quarterback. I've said it before. I don't think Jaden Mayava is that guy. I like Husan Longstreet, their true freshman quarterback. Will he start week 1? I'm not sure. It wouldn't necessarily be shocking to me if Husan Longstreet started week 1. The start of the season is a little bit softer for USC, so being able to work him in and develop that chemistry and those relationships with those wide receivers and build a lot of that confidence early could be exactly what Husan Longstreet needs. And when you have a true freshman quarterback, potentially, having two weapons out there like Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon is only going to help the young man become a better quarterback as time certainly goes on. There is a long way to go, I think, for USC to get to that level that Trojan fans want them to get to, but there are now signs of positivity surrounding this program, and you can maybe start to see some factors where they're maybe starting to turn the corner starting here in 2025.